can't believe you actually think I'd go to your ex-wife's wedding. Aurora Blake's voice cut through the office like a verdict. Liam Carter stood there, the 32-year-old man who'd spent 6 years as this woman's executive assistant, feeling every word like a slap. He never asked her for anything, never, until now. And the answer had just crushed him. But this isn't a story about rejection. This is a story about a man about to be humiliated in front of his daughter, and the woman who finally showed up when he stopped asking. Please follow my story to the end. Hit like, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The rain started at 6:47 a.m., which meant Liam Carter was already late. He grabbed 2 lunchboxes from the counter, one with carrot sticks his daughter would ignore, one with the granola bars she'd actually eat, and shoved them into her backpack while simultaneously trying to button his shirt cuff with his teeth. The coffee maker beeped. The toast burned. Somewhere upstairs, his 8-year-old daughter Mia was absolutely not putting on her shoes like he'd asked 3 times. Mia, we have 7 minutes. I can't find my other sock. Liam closed his eyes, breathed. The sock was probably under her bed, wedged between the stuffed rabbit and the collection of rocks she insisted were special. He took the stairs 2 at a time, found the sock exactly where he knew it would be, and returned to discover Mia had put on the wrong shoes entirely. Those are your church shoes? They're prettier. They're going to give you blisters by recess. You don't know that. He did know that. He knew it because last month she'd worn them to the park and complained the whole way home. But he also knew that arguing about it would cost them another 4 minutes they didn't have, so he just grabbed her backpack and his briefcase and herded her toward the door. The drive to Riverside Elementary took 12 minutes in good traffic. They had 9. Liam made it in 10, which he considered a personal victory, even if it meant taking a turn slightly faster than the speed limit technically allowed. Mia didn't notice. She was staring out the window, quiet in that particular way that meant she was thinking about something she didn't want to talk about. You okay, kiddo? She shrugged. Liam glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She had his dark hair, but everything else. The sharp cheekbones, the wide green eyes, the way she held her mouth when she was trying not to cry came straight from her mother. Is this about the wedding? He asked carefully. Another shrug. You know you don't have to go if you don't want to. Mom said I have to. Of course she did. Vanessa had that gift, making requirements sound like invitations, making you feel guilty for even considering saying no. Liam had fallen for it for years before he finally realized that's what it was. Well, he said, pulling into the drop-off lane, if you go, I'll be there too, okay? Mia looked at him then, and something in her expression made his chest tight. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was worse. It was doubt. Like she wasn't sure he'd actually show up, like she wasn't sure he belonged there. Okay, she said quietly. She grabbed her backpack and slid out of the car, and Liam watched her walk toward the entrance, those 2 fancy shoes already rubbing at her heels, until she disappeared through the double doors. Then he sat there for another 30 seconds, gripping the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe normally. The thing about being a single father that nobody told you was how tired you'd be. Not just physically tired, though there was plenty of that, but tired in a way that went deeper. Tired of always being the one who had to remember everything. Tired of never quite measuring up. Tired of looking at your daughter and wondering if she was starting to see you the way your ex-wife did. As someone who tried hard but never quite got there, Liam shook his head and put the car in drive. He didn't have time for this. He had exactly 43 minutes to get across town, pick up Aurora's dry cleaning, grab her specific brand of sparkling water that only one store carried, and still make it to the office before her 8:15 meeting. He made it with 2 minutes to spare. Blake Enterprises occupied the top 15 floors of the Meridian Tower downtown, a gleaming column of glass and steel that reflected the sky so perfectly it looked like it was made of light. Liam had been working there for 6 years, first as a junior scheduling coordinator, then as senior assistant to operations, and finally as executive assistant to the CEO herself. Aurora Blake. Even her name sounded like money. She was 34, Harvard-educated, terrifyingly brilliant, and so attractive that the first time Liam met her, he'd actually forgotten what he was supposed to say. Not that it mattered. Aurora didn't notice things like that. She noticed missed deadlines, inefficient processes, and whether or not your quarterly projections accounted for international tariff shifts. She noticed if you were useful. And Liam was very, very useful. He arrived at his desk at 8:03 a.m., which meant he had precisely 12 minutes before Aurora's first meeting. Her coffee was already waiting, black, no sugar, extra hot, and he'd already gone through her inbox to flag the 17 emails that actually required her attention versus the 63 that didn't. The office was pristine, glass walls, minimalist furniture, a view of the city that made you feel like you were floating. Aurora's personal office sat behind a frosted partition, visible but untouchable, like everything else about her. Liam had just finished updating her briefing notes when she arrived. She didn't walk into a room. She entered it. There was a difference. Aurora wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Liam's monthly rent. Her dark hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless, but definitely wasn't, and she carried herself with the kind of confidence that made people straighten their spines without realizing it. "Morning," she said, not looking at him. "Morning. Coffee's ready. Your 8:15 with the Singapore team has been moved to 8:30 because their side had a scheduling conflict. I pushed your 9 o'clock back 15 minutes to compensate. The contract revisions from legal came in late last night. I've highlighted the 3 sections that contradict what you agreed to verbally. Also, Marcus from accounting called twice yesterday afternoon about the Q3 budget allocation. I told him you'd get back to him by end of week." Aurora took the coffee, took the briefing folder, and finally looked at him. "You're late," she said. 3 minutes. Still late. She wasn't wrong. Liam didn't bother defending himself. Aurora didn't care about excuses. She cared about results. "It won't happen again," he said. She studied him for a moment, and he had the uncomfortable feeling that she could see straight through him, the burned toast, the lost sock, the way Mia had looked at him in the car. But then she just nodded and disappeared into her office, and the moment passed. Liam exhaled and sat down at his desk. Jennifer from HR walked by with her usual morning smile. "Rough morning. Is it that obvious? You've got that look, the I've already fought 3 battles and it's not even 8:30 look." Liam laughed despite himself. "Pretty much." "Well, you survived. That's something." She continued on to her office, and Liam turned to his computer. Survived. Yeah, that was one way to put it. The morning unfolded in its usual rhythm. Aurora's 8:30 call with Singapore ran 15 minutes over, which meant Liam had to personally call her 9 o'clock and apologize for the delay. At 10, there was an emergency meeting with the VP of Operations about a supplier issue in Taiwan. Liam sat in on that one, taking notes, flagging action items, making sure Aurora had every piece of information she needed before she needed it. At 11, she had him research 3 competing firms for a potential acquisition. By noon, he'd prepared a 12-page analysis complete with financial projections and risk assessments. "This is good," Aurora said when he handed it to her. She was standing by her window, looking out at the city. "Really good." "Thank you. How long did this take you?" "About 90 minutes. She turned to look at him. "Most people would need a full day for this." Liam shrugged. "I know what you're looking for." "Yes," she said slowly. "You do." There was something odd in her tone, something Liam couldn't quite read. But before he could analyze it, her phone buzzed with her next meeting, and the moment was gone. Liam went back to his desk and ate his lunch, a turkey sandwich he'd made the night before while helping Mia with her math homework. He ate it in 6 minutes flat, standing up, while simultaneously reviewing Aurora's afternoon schedule and responding to 3 urgent emails that had come in from the Berlin office. That's when he saw it. The envelope. It was sitting in his personal inbox, not the company one, the small wooden tray he kept for actual mail. And it was the kind of heavy, expensive stationery that people only used for weddings or funerals. Liam's stomach dropped before he even opened it. Inside was an invitation, embossed in gold script, so elaborate it was almost unreadable. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Vanessa Marie Holloway and Jonathan Gregory Whitmore III. The date was 3 weeks away. Saturday, the 15th. The location was the Ashford Estate, which Liam knew from exactly one previous experience was the kind of place where they had 15 different forks at dinner, and someone whose entire job was to make sure your wine glass never got below half full. There was a handwritten note clipped to the invitation, written in Vanessa's perfect, slanting script. Liam, Mia insists you be there. I've reserved a seat for you. Please, try to dress appropriately. We're keeping things elegant. V. He read it twice, then a third time. Then he very carefully set it down before he crumpled it into a ball and threw it across the room, which is what he actually wanted to do. Dress appropriately. As if he didn't know how to wear a suit. As if he'd show up in jeans and a t-shirt like some clueless idiot who didn't understand what black tie optional meant. As if he hadn't been married to her for 5 years and attended dozens of events exactly like this one. Liam closed his eyes and counted to 10. Vanessa had always been good at this. The subtle digs that sounded like concern, the implications that you weren't quite good enough, but she was generous enough to tolerate you anyway. When they were married, he'd convinced himself it was just her sense of humor, that she was teasing, that he was being too sensitive. After the divorce, he'd realized it was just her. This was who she was. Someone who needed to be superior, who needed you to know you were inferior. The worst part was that she wasn't even wrong. Liam didn't belong at a place like the Ashford estate. He didn't belong in a room full of people who summered in the Hamptons and had opera subscriptions and knew the difference between a Bordeaux and a Burgundy. He was a single father who worked 80-hour weeks and ate cereal for dinner 3 times a week because cooking an actual meal felt like too much effort. But Mia would be there, and Mia would see him standing alone in the corner, the odd man out, the guy who used to be married to the bride and clearly couldn't compete with Jonathan Gregory Whitmore III, who probably had a yacht and a villa and a last name that sounded like a law firm. Liam looked at the invitation again. Then he looked at Aurora's office. The idea hit him like a lightning strike. It was stupid. Possibly the stupidest idea he'd ever had. Aurora would say no. Of course she would say no. She'd look at him like he'd lost his mind, and then she'd probably start questioning whether he was really the right person for this job if he couldn't maintain proper professional boundaries. But the idea wouldn't let go. Because if he showed up with Aurora Blake, CEO of a billion-dollar company, the kind of woman who made board members nervous, then suddenly he wouldn't be the pathetic ex-husband. He'd be the guy who'd moved on, the guy who was doing just fine, better than fine. And Mia would see that. Liam spent the next 2 hours trying to talk himself out of it. He answered emails. He coordinated a conference call with London. He reviewed the catering proposal for next month's investor meeting. But the whole time, the invitation sat on his desk, and the idea sat in his head. And by the time Aurora's 2 o'clock meeting ended, he'd already decided he was going to do it. He waited until she came out, until she was standing at his desk reviewing the notes he'd prepared for her next call. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Aurora glanced up. "Is it about work?" "No." Then probably not. She wasn't being cruel. That was just how she was. Boundaries. Clear, firm, non-negotiable. In 6 years, Liam had never crossed them. Not once. He'd watched other assistants try to get personal with her, asking about her weekend, commenting on her clothes, trying to build some kind of friendship. Aurora shut them down every time. Not rudely, just firmly. "This is work. You are my employee. We are not friends." Liam had always respected that. It made things simpler, cleaner. No messy emotions, no complicated dynamics, just a professional relationship where both parties knew exactly where they stood. Until now. "I need a favor," he said. That got her attention. Aurora actually stopped what she was doing and looked at him, really looked at him, like she was trying to figure out if he'd been replaced by an alien. "You never ask for favors," she said slowly. "I know. In 6 years, you've never asked me for anything that wasn't directly work-related." "I know. So this must be important." Liam hesitated. He could still back out. He could laugh it off, say it was nothing, go back to being the invisible assistant who kept her life running smoothly and never caused problems. But then he thought about Mia's face in the car. That look of doubt. "My ex-wife is getting married," he said. 3 weeks from now. Big wedding, fancy venue. My daughter's going to be there." Aurora waited. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush him, just waited. "I'm going too," Liam continued, "but I'm going to be the only person there alone. Everyone else will have dates, spouses, partners, someone. And my ex-wife is marrying some incredibly wealthy guy who makes me look like I'm barely scraping by. Which, to be fair, I kind of am. And I know exactly how it's going to look. Like I'm the one who didn't measure up. Like I'm the one who got left behind. Like I'm the cautionary tale. And you care what these people think? I care what my daughter thinks. That landed differently. Aurora's expression shifted just slightly, but enough that Liam knew she was actually listening now. I don't need you to actually be there the whole time, he said quickly. I just need you to show up. Walk in with me, stay for an hour, maybe 2, then leave. That's it. Just long enough that Mia sees I'm not alone. That I'm not the guy who couldn't move on. That I'm not... He trailed off. He didn't know how to finish that sentence without sounding pathetic. Aurora set down the notes, folded her hands. You want me to be your date? I want you to be my buffer. Same thing. It's not the same thing. Liam. She said his name the way a teacher might say it to a student who'd just asked a very stupid question. You're asking me to attend your ex-wife's wedding, pretend to be romantically involved with you, and help you save face in front of people I've never met. When you put it like that, how else would I put it? I don't know. More generously? She almost smiled. Almost. This is a terrible idea. I know. You're my assistant. This would be inappropriate. I know. And frankly, it sounds like a nightmare. It definitely is. Aurora picked up the notes again, a clear signal that the conversation was over. I can't believe you actually think I'd go to your ex-wife's wedding. The words hit him like a physical blow. Not because they were cruel, they weren't. Aurora wasn't being mean. She was being honest, which somehow made it worse. Right, Liam said. Of course. I shouldn't have asked. No, you shouldn't have. It was unprofessional. Yes, I apologize. Aurora looked at him for a long moment, and Liam couldn't read her expression at all. Then she walked back into her office, and the glass door closed behind her with a quiet click. Liam sat at his desk, staring at the invitation, feeling like an idiot. He shouldn't have asked. He'd known she'd say no, but some small, stupid part of him had hoped she wouldn't. No. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Liam threw himself into work, responded to 47 emails, coordinated a last-minute schedule change for Aurora's trip to Boston next week, and personally called the caterer about the dietary restrictions for the investor meeting. By 6 o'clock, most of the office had cleared out. By 7, it was just him and Aurora, which wasn't unusual. They often worked late. At 7:30, Aurora emerged from her office with her coat and briefcase. I'm heading out, she said. Have a good night. She paused at his desk. Liam. Yes? About earlier. You don't need to explain. I get it. It was a stupid request. It wasn't stupid. It was just impossible. Right, impossible. Got it. Aurora frowned. You understand why, don't you? If I went with you, people would talk. It would raise questions about our working relationship. It could compromise your position here. And mine. I understand. Good. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. For what it's worth, I think you're underestimating yourself. You don't need me there to prove anything to anyone. Easy for you to say? What's that supposed to mean? Liam looked up at her. You've never had to prove yourself. You've always been the one everyone else is trying to impress. Something flickered across Aurora's face. Surprise, maybe, or something else. But it was gone before Liam could identify it. Have a good night, Liam, she said quietly. Then she left. Liam sat there for another 20 minutes, staring at nothing, before he finally packed up his things and headed home. The next 2 weeks passed in a haze of work and dread. Liam kept himself busy, too busy to think about the wedding, too busy to imagine all the ways it was going to go wrong. He coordinated Aurora's schedule, managed a minor crisis with a vendor in Frankfurt, personally ensured that the quarterly earnings report went out without a single typo, and somehow still found time to help Mia with her science project on volcanoes. At home, Mia talked about the wedding constantly. Mom says there's going to be ice sculptures shaped like swans. That's nice, kiddo. And a chocolate fountain with 3 different kinds of chocolate. Sounds fancy. And she's wearing a dress that cost $20,000. Liam nearly dropped the plate he was washing. $20,000? That's what she said. She showed me a picture. It has all these little crystals on it. Of course it did, because Vanessa's new husband-to-be, had the kind of money where $20,000 for a dress was a rounding error, where you could spend more on a single outfit than most people made in 6 months and not even blink. Jonathan Gregory Whitmore III was a venture capitalist, which, as far as Liam could tell, meant he made money by having money. He was 41, which Vanessa described as distinguished, and he had houses in 3 different states, which she described as practical. They'd met at some charity gala 8 months ago, gotten engaged after 6 weeks, and were now having the kind of wedding that required a full-time coordinator, a backup coordinator, and probably a therapist for both of them. Liam had seen exactly one photo of Jonathan, and the guy looked exactly like you'd expect. Tall, square-jawed, silver at the temples, the kind of tan you only got from actual leisure time. He looked like he'd never burned toast in his life. He looked like he'd never had to choose between paying for his daughter's field trip or fixing the weird noise his car was making. He looked like someone who'd never had to worry about anything, ever. "Do you like him?" Liam asked Mia one night while they were eating spaghetti at the kitchen table. She shrugged. "He's okay." "Just okay? He gave me an iPad for my birthday." "That was nice of him." "Mom told him to." Liam hid his smile. "How do you know that?" "Because she told him to get me the purple one, and he got me the silver one, and she made him go back and exchange it. I heard her yelling at him on the phone." Yeah, that sounded like Vanessa. She had very specific ideas about how things should be, and heaven help you if you deviated from them. "Do you want me to come to the wedding?" Liam asked. Mia looked up at him, her fork halfway to her mouth. "You're coming, right? If you want me to." "Of course I want you to. Why wouldn't I want you to?" "I don't know. I just thought maybe it would be awkward. You know, with your mom and Jonathan and everything." Mia put her fork down. "Dad, it's already going to be awkward, like super awkward. Mom keeps telling everyone that Jonathan is a real provider and that she's finally found stability. And Grandma keeps saying how nice it is that Mom found someone age-appropriate after you." Liam winced. "She actually said that?" "Yeah, right in front of me. And then she saw me listening and tried to say she meant something else, but I'm not stupid." "No, you're definitely not stupid. So if you don't come, it's just going to be worse. Because then everyone will think you're too sad to show up or something." "I'm not sad." "I know you're not, but they don't know that." Liam reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then I'll be there." She smiled, and for a moment she looked so much younger than 8. "Promise?" "Promise." After she went to bed, Liam sat at the kitchen table and stared at the invitation, which he'd propped up against the salt shaker like some kind of terrible reminder. The Ashford estate. Black tie optional. Cocktail hour at 5, ceremony at 6, reception to follow. He had nothing to wear. Well, that wasn't true. He had a suit. One suit. The navy one he'd worn to job interviews and the occasional company event. It was fine. Perfectly serviceable. But it wasn't the kind of suit you wore to a wedding at the Ashford estate. It wasn't the kind of suit that said, "I'm doing great, thanks for asking." It was the kind of suit that said, "I tried." Liam pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in years. He looked up how much a decent suit cost. The answer made him want to throw his phone across the room. $800. For something basic. If he wanted something actually nice, something that would hold up next to whatever Jonathan and his groomsmen were wearing, he was looking at $1,500 minimum. He didn't have $1,500. He barely had $800. And even if he did, spending it on a suit for one wedding felt insane. Mia needed new shoes. The car needed an oil change. The roof was doing that thing again where it leaked when it rained too hard. But the alternative was showing up in his regular suit and having everyone see exactly what he was. Someone who was just barely holding it together. Liam put his phone down and rubbed his eyes. This was a mistake. Going to this wedding was a mistake. He should just tell Mia he couldn't make it, that something came up at work, that he was sorry, but she'd have a great time without him. Except he'd promised, and he didn't break promises to his daughter. So he'd go. And he'd wear his regular suit, and he'd smile and nod and pretend everything was fine, while everyone looked at him with pity or contempt or worse, indifference. 5 days before the wedding, Aurora called him into her office. "Close the door," she said. That was never a good sign. In 6 years, Aurora had only asked him to close the door maybe a dozen times, and it was usually because she was about to deliver bad news. A budget cut. A project cancellation. Once, memorably, to tell him that the VP of marketing had been embezzling funds and was about to be arrested. Liam closed the door and sat down. Aurora was standing by her window, looking out at the city. She did that when she was thinking, when she was working through something complicated. "Is everything okay?" Liam asked. I've been thinking about what you asked me, she said. About the wedding. Liam's stomach dropped. I told you, forget it. It was inappropriate. I shouldn't have put you in that position. You're right, you shouldn't have. She turned to look at him. But I understand why you did. You do? You're trying to protect your daughter. That's not stupid. It's actually… She paused, choosing her words carefully. It's admirable. Liam didn't know what to say to that. However, Aurora continued, I still can't go with you. For all the reasons I already stated, it would be inappropriate. It would raise questions. And frankly, I don't do weddings. I don't even go to my own family's weddings if I can avoid it. I get it, really. You don't have to explain again. I'm not finished. She crossed her arms. I can't go with you, but I can help you. Help me how? You need to look the part, correct? You need to walk into that wedding and project confidence, authority, the sense that you're doing just fine without your ex-wife. I mean, yeah, that would be great, but Aurora pulled out her phone, tapped something, and then showed him the screen. It was a contact card for someone named Richard Chen. Richard is a personal shopper, very discreet, very good at what he does. I've already called him and told him you'll be coming in tomorrow at 10. He'll fit you for a suit, a proper one, not something off the rack. Liam stared at the phone. I can't afford… It's taken care of. What? Consider it a bonus. For 6 years of exceptional work. Aurora, I can't let you buy me a suit. Why not? Because it's too much. Because it's charity. Her expression hardened. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what else to call it. Call it an investment. She put her phone away. You're good at your job, Liam. Better than good. You're the best assistant I've ever had, and I've had 7. You anticipate what I need before I know I need it. You solve problems before they become problems. You make my life easier in about 1,000 different ways, and I don't tell you that often enough. Liam felt his throat tighten. So no, Aurora said. This isn't charity. This is me acknowledging that you deserve to walk into that wedding with your head up. And you can't do that if you're worried about your suit. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her it was too much, that he couldn't accept it, that there had to be some kind of ethical violation in letting your boss buy you clothes. But the truth was, he needed this. He needed it so badly, it scared him. Thank you, he said quietly. Aurora nodded. Richard's expecting you at 10. Don't be late. Richard Chen's studio was in a part of downtown Liam had never been to. The kind of neighborhood where the shops didn't have signs out front because if you had to ask what they sold, you couldn't afford it. The studio itself was on the 2nd floor of a converted brownstone, all exposed brick and modern lighting and racks of suits that looked like they cost more than Liam's car. Richard himself was in his 50s, elegant and precise, with the kind of calm authority that made you stand up straighter without realizing it. You must be Liam, he said, shaking his hand. Aurora speaks very highly of you. She does? Oh yes, she said you were intelligent, dependable, and utterly professional. He smiled. She also said you had terrible taste in suits and needed my help immediately. Liam laughed despite himself. Yeah, that sounds like her. Richard led him to a fitting area, a raised platform surrounded by mirrors, and immediately started taking measurements. He worked quickly, efficiently, calling out numbers to an assistant who wrote them down. So, Richard said, Aurora mentioned this is for a wedding? My ex-wife's wedding, actually. Ah, Richard didn't even blink. And you want to make an impression. I want to not look like I'm drowning. Well, we can certainly do better than that. He stepped back, studying Liam with a critical eye. You have good shoulders, good posture. We'll go with something classic but modern. Charcoal gray, I think. Single-breasted, notch lapel. We'll do a subtle pattern in the fabric, nothing loud, just enough to catch the light, and we'll tailor it properly. That's where most people go wrong. They buy an expensive suit and then don't get it fitted correctly. How long does this usually take? For a rush job? 3 days. Aurora said you need it by Saturday, so we're cutting it close, but we'll make it work. Over the next hour, Richard pulled out fabric samples, showed Liam different styles, explained the difference between half canvas and full canvas construction in a way that actually made sense. He picked out a shirt, white, Egyptian cotton, French cuffs, and a tie that was dark blue with a pattern so subtle you could barely see it. "Shoes?" Richard asked. "I have shoes." Richard looked at Liam's feet. "No, you don't." 20 minutes later, Liam was trying on a pair of Oxfords that felt like they'd been custom made for his feet. Which, Richard explained, they basically were. "Okay," Liam said, looking at himself in the mirror. "This is insane, but necessary. I'm going to a wedding, not meeting the president. From what Aurora told me, this wedding is just as important." Richard adjusted the collar of the shirt Liam was trying on. "You're not just showing up for yourself. You're showing up for your daughter. And children notice everything. They notice when their parents are confident, when they're uncertain, when they're pretending." Liam met Richard's eyes in the mirror. "So we make sure," Richard said quietly, "that you're not pretending." The suit was ready on Friday, exactly as promised. Liam picked it up after work, and when he got home and tried it on in front of his bedroom mirror, he barely recognized himself. The suit fit perfectly. Not just well, perfectly. Like it had been designed specifically for his body. The shoulders sat exactly right. The pants broke at exactly the right point on his shoes. The whole thing made him look taller, broader, more put together than he'd ever looked in his life. Mia knocked on his door. "Dad, can I come in?" "Yeah." She opened the door and stopped dead. "Whoa. Too much? You look like a movie star." Liam laughed. "I don't know about that." "No, seriously, you look really good." She came closer, studying him. "Is this for the wedding?" "Yeah." "Mom's gonna freak out." "That's not really the goal." "But it's going to happen anyway." Mia grinned. "Can you wear this when you pick me up from school sometimes? Like, just to show off?" "Absolutely not." "Please, just once. I want Madison Brenner to see my dad looking like he's in a magazine." "Who's Madison Brenner?" "This girl in my class who thinks her dad is so cool because he drives a BMW. But your suit is way cooler than a BMW." Liam knelt down so he was eye level with her. "Kiddo, you know the suit doesn't matter, right? It's just clothes." "I know, but it's nice that you have nice clothes now." "I had nice clothes before." She gave him a look, the same look she gave him when he tried to tell her that the vegetables he'd hidden in her pasta sauce weren't actually there. "Okay," Liam admitted. "Maybe not this nice." "Exactly." She hugged him, quick and fierce. "You're going to do great tomorrow. I know you are." Liam hugged her back and tried not to think about all the ways she might be wrong. The day of the wedding arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, temperature in the mid-70s, just enough breeze to keep things comfortable. Liam spent the morning helping Mia get ready. Vanessa was sending a car to pick her up at noon so she could be there early for hair and makeup and whatever else was involved in being a flower girl. The car arrived exactly on time. It was a black town car with a driver in a suit, and Mia's eyes went wide when she saw it. "This is for me," apparently. "This is so cool." She grabbed her bag. Vanessa had sent over her flower girl dress in advance, along with detailed instructions about how her hair should be styled, and headed for the door. Then she paused and looked back at Liam. "You're still coming, right?" "I'll be there at 5. "Promise?" "Promise." She studied his face for a moment, like she was trying to memorize it, and then she nodded and ran out to the car. Liam stood in the doorway and watched the car pull away, and he felt the familiar knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. 5 hours. He had 5 hours to get himself together. He showered. He shaved carefully, taking his time. He put on the suit, the shirt, the tie. He looked at himself in the mirror and tried to see what Richard had seen, someone confident, someone put together, someone who belonged. He saw a guy in a nice suit who was terrified of his ex-wife's wedding, but it would have to do. The Ashford estate was exactly as terrible as Liam remembered. It sat on 40 acres of manicured grounds, all rolling hills and decorative hedges, and a driveway so long you could see the house a full minute before you actually reached it. The building itself was a sprawling Georgian manor that looked like it had been airlifted straight out of an English countryside postcard. White columns, tall windows, a fountain in the front that had actual swans in it. Liam parked his sedan between a Mercedes and a Tesla and tried not to feel like he'd driven up in a golf cart. He sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, breathing. You can do this. It's just a wedding. Just a few hours. You show up, you smile, you watch Mia walk down the aisle, you sit through the ceremony, you leave. Easy. Except nothing about this felt easy. Liam got out of the car, straightened his tie, and walked toward the entrance. The doors were open, and inside he could already hear the low murmur of conversation, the gentle clink of glasses, the ambient sound of wealth. A young woman in a black vest directed him toward the garden, where the cocktail reception was being held before the ceremony. The garden was even worse than the house. It was the kind of place where every flower looked like it had been personally interviewed before being allowed to grow there. White tents had been set up on the lawn, strung with lights that would look magical once the sun went down. Round tables with cream-colored linens, a bar that was serving cocktails with names like Eternal Bliss and Forever After. A string quartet playing something classical and boring in the corner. And people. So many people. Liam recognized a few faces from his marriage to Vanessa, her college friends, her parents, a couple of cousins he'd met at Thanksgiving once. They were all dressed like they'd stepped out of a magazine shoot. The men wore suits that fit so perfectly they had to be custom. The women wore dresses that moved like water. Everyone looked comfortable, confident, like they belonged. Liam grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, mostly because it gave him something to do with his hands, and tried to blend into the background. It didn't work. Liam. Oh my God, Liam Carter? He turned to find Rachel Holloway, Vanessa's younger sister, bearing down on him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was wearing a champagne-colored dress that probably cost more than Liam's monthly rent, and she had that same look Vanessa always had, assessing, measuring, finding you slightly lacking but too polite to say so directly. Hi, Rachel. I can't believe you actually came. She said it like it was a delightful surprise, but Liam heard the subtext. I can't believe you had the nerve to show your face here. Mia wanted me to, he said simply. Of course. She's around here somewhere. Vanessa has her getting ready with the other flower girls. They're all in the bridal suite doing hair and makeup. It's adorable. Rachel was giving him the full assessment now, looking him up and down in that way that was meant to seem casual, but absolutely wasn't. Her gaze snagged on his suit, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or disappointment that she couldn't immediately find something to criticize. Well, she said after a moment, you look nice. New suit? Yeah. It fits well. Thanks. So, she said, glancing around with exaggerated casualness, did you bring anyone? And there it was. The real question. No, Liam said. Oh. The pity in her voice was razor sharp, wrapped in concern. Well, that's fine. I'm sure you'll have a nice time anyway. Vanessa made sure there's an open bar, so at least there's that. She patted his arm, actually patted it, like he was a dog, and then drifted away to greet someone else, someone more important, someone worth her time. Liam took a long drink of champagne and told himself it was going to be fine. It wasn't fine. Over the next 40 minutes, Liam perfected the art of looking occupied while having absolutely nothing to do. He moved from the bar to the edge of the tent, from the tent to a cluster of decorative topiaries that gave him a clear view of the garden entrance. He nodded at people he vaguely recognized. He smiled at strangers who smiled first. He checked his phone 17 times, even though he had no messages, no emails, nothing that required his attention. He was invisible, which was exactly what he'd been afraid of. At one point, he found himself standing near a group of men about his age, Jonathan's groomsmen, from the look of them. They all had that same polished quality, that ease that came from never having to worry about money or status or whether your car would make it through another winter. So Jonathan finally did it, one of them was saying. He had sandy hair and a watch that probably cost more than Liam's entire suit. I honestly didn't think he'd go through with it. Why not? Another one asked. Vanessa's gorgeous. Yeah, but she's also intense, you know what I mean? Like high maintenance intense. All beautiful women are high maintenance. Not like this. My sister knows her from some charity board, and apparently Vanessa has very specific ideas about everything. The wedding, the house, how things should be run. Jonathan's not exactly a pushover, but I give it 2 years before he realizes what he signed up for. They all laughed, and Liam felt a strange twist in his chest. Part vindication, because yes, Vanessa was exactly that intense, exactly that specific about everything, and part something darker. Because these men were talking about his daughter's mother, the woman he'd once loved enough to marry. "What about the ex-husband?" the first man said. "Is he here?" "I heard he was invited. Some kind of gesture for the kid." "That's awkward as hell, right?" Can you imagine showing up to your ex-wife's wedding to watch her marry a guy who makes 10 times what you make? "I'd fake the flu." More laughter. Liam stood there, frozen, champagne glass in hand, wondering if he should walk away or stay and confirm their worst assumptions by revealing himself. He walked away. He made it to the far side of the garden near a stone wall covered in climbing roses before he had to stop and breathe. His hands were shaking. Not much, just enough that he had to set the champagne glass down on the wall before he spilled it. This was a mistake. Coming here was a mistake. He should leave. Right now. Just get in his car and drive away, and text Mia later with some excuse about work or food poisoning, or literally anything that would get him out of this. But then he thought about her face when she'd asked if he was coming. That desperate hope. He picked up the champagne glass and finished it in one long swallow. The ceremony was scheduled for 6 o'clock. By 5:30, guests were being directed toward the rows of white chairs set up on the far lawn, facing an elaborate arbor draped in white fabric and more flowers than Liam had ever seen in one place. He found his assigned seat, back row, aisle seat, which told him exactly how important Vanessa considered him to this event, and sat down. The seats around him filled quickly. A middle-aged couple to his left who didn't acknowledge him. A young woman to his right who was too busy texting to notice he existed. In front of him, row after row of people who all seemed to know each other, who were all laughing and chatting and taking photos with their expensive phones. Liam sat there, alone in a crowd of 200 people, and tried to look like it didn't bother him. At exactly 6 o'clock, the string quartet started playing. Everyone stood. Liam stood with them, and that's when he saw her. Mia. She was walking down the aisle with another flower girl, both of them carrying small baskets of rose petals that they scattered with exaggerated seriousness. Mia's flower crown sat slightly crooked on her head, and her dress was maybe a little too long, brushing the grass as she walked. But she looked so proud, so focused on getting it right, that Liam felt his throat close up. She spotted him as she passed his row, and her whole face lit up. She didn't wave. Vanessa had probably told her not to. But she smiled at him, huge and genuine, and that smile was worth every terrible minute of this entire day. The bridesmaids came next, a parade of beautiful women in champagne-colored dresses. Then the music shifted, and everyone turned to watch Vanessa appear at the end of the aisle. The $20,000 dress was worth every penny. It fit her perfectly, all silk and crystals in a train that went on forever. Her hair was swept up in some elaborate style, and she carried a bouquet of white roses that matched the arbor. She looked like she'd stepped out of a bridal magazine, like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. And on her father's arm, she walked toward Jonathan, who stood at the arbor looking appropriately emotional. Liam watched the whole thing and felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not jealousy, not even nostalgia for what they'd once had. Just a sort of distant observation, like he was watching a movie about people he used to know. The ceremony itself was short. Traditional vows, a reading from some poet Liam didn't recognize, an exchange of rings. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife. Jonathan kissed Vanessa. Everyone applauded, and just like that, it was done. The crowd started moving toward the reception tent, which had been transformed while they were at the ceremony. The round tables now had centerpieces, more flowers, votives, arrangements that probably required an engineering degree. Place cards directed people to their assigned seats. Waiters circulated with trays of appetizers that looked too pretty to eat. Liam found his table. He was seated with people he didn't know, friends of Jonathan's parents, from the look of them. They introduced themselves politely and then immediately returned to their own conversation. Liam sat there and studied the menu card at his place setting. 5 courses. Wine pairings. A choice of 3 entrees, all of which sounded like they'd been designed by someone who thought food should be art first and edible second. A waiter appeared at his elbow. "Have you decided on your entree, sir?" "The salmon, I guess." "Excellent choice. And for wine?" "Whatever you think." The waiter nodded and moved on. Liam looked around the tent. Vanessa and Jonathan were making their entrance now. to thunderous applause. They looked happy, genuinely happy. Jonathan had his arm around her waist, and Vanessa was laughing at something he'd said, and they made their way to the head table where Mia was already sitting with the rest of the wedding party. Mia caught his eye across the tent and waved. Liam waved back. Then someone clinked a glass and the room fell silent, and the speeches began. Jonathan's best man went first. He told a story about their college days, something involving a road trip to Vegas and a misunderstanding with hotel security. Everyone laughed. He told another story about how Jonathan had called him after the first date with Vanessa, saying he'd met the woman he was going to marry. More laughter, some appreciative awes from the crowd. Then Vanessa's maid of honor stood up. She talked about how Vanessa deserved this happiness, how she'd waited for the right person, how Jonathan was everything she'd ever wanted. She raised her glass. To Vanessa and Jonathan, may your love story be as perfect as today. Everyone drank. Dinner was served in waves, an appetizer that Liam couldn't identify, a soup that was somehow both hot and cold at the same time, a salad with cheese that tasted like feet. The salmon eventually arrived, and it was actually good, though the portion was so small Liam knew he'd be hungry again in an hour. The wine kept flowing. The conversation at his table stayed surface level and polite. No one asked him who he was or how he knew the bride and groom. They probably assumed he was someone's plus one, someone's colleague, someone forgettable. By the time dessert was served, some kind of layered chocolate thing with gold leaf on top, because of course there was gold leaf, Liam was starting to think he might actually make it through this. He'd done what he came to do. He'd shown up. Mia had seen him. In another hour or so, he could reasonably slip out without anyone noticing. But then Jonathan stood up. He tapped his glass with a fork, and the room fell silent again. Everyone turned to look at him, expectant, smiling. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, Jonathan said. His voice was smooth, practiced, the voice of someone who'd given a lot of toasts at a lot of events. Vanessa and I are so grateful to have all of you celebrate with us. This day wouldn't be the same without you. Polite applause. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone special, Jonathan continued. He paused for effect, and Liam's stomach started to sink. Someone who I know this evening might be a little uncomfortable for. No, please no. Vanessa's ex-husband, Liam, is here tonight. Every head in the tent turned toward Liam's table. 200 pairs of eyes, all landing on him at once. Liam felt his face go hot. And I think it takes a lot of class, Jonathan said, to show up and support your daughter, even when it's not easy. Even when you're watching your ex-wife marry someone else. That's putting your child first, and I respect that. Liam wanted to disappear. He wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. So, Liam, Jonathan said, raising his glass and looking directly at him across the tent, thank you for being here. Thank you for raising such an amazing little girl. And thank you for loving Vanessa enough, at one point, to create the family that brought Mia into the world. We wouldn't be here without you. Literally. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Appreciative, warm, like Jonathan had just said something deeply magnanimous. To Liam, Jonathan said. To Liam, the room echoed. 200 people raised their glasses to him. 200 people drank to his honor. And Liam sat there, frozen, feeling like he'd been stripped naked in front of everyone he'd ever known. It was meant to be gracious, generous, a gesture of goodwill from the groom to the man who'd come before him. But all Liam heard was, look at this guy. Look at the man who wasn't good enough. Look at the man she left behind. Isn't it nice that we're letting him be here? Isn't it charitable of us to acknowledge his existence? He forced a smile, raised his own glass with a hand that shook just slightly, nodded his thanks across the tent to Jonathan, who nodded back with what looked like genuine warmth. And then everyone went back to their desserts, and the moment passed, and Liam was left sitting there with the taste of humiliation in his mouth. The woman next to him leaned over. That was very sweet of Jonathan. Yeah, Liam managed. Very sweet. You must be proud of your daughter. She's adorable. I am. Thanks. It's wonderful that you all get along so well. Co-parenting can be so difficult. Liam just nodded. He didn't trust himself to say anything else. As soon as dessert was cleared, the dancing started. A DJ took over from the string quartet, and the first dance was announced. Vanessa and Jonathan took to the floor, and everyone watched as they swayed to some romantic song that Liam vaguely recognized. Then other couples joined them. The wedding party, the parents, friends, and family. Liam stayed at his table. He watched Mia dance with one of Jonathan's nephews, both of them laughing as they tried to figure out what to do with their hands. He watched Vanessa's mother dance with Vanessa's father, both of them looking older than Liam remembered. He watched strangers dance with their partners, their spouses, their dates. And he sat alone. At some point, Rachel appeared at his table again. She was slightly drunk now, her smile wider, her movements less controlled. "Liam, why aren't you dancing?" "Not really my thing." "Oh, come on, it's a wedding. Everyone dances at weddings." "I'm good here," she pouted. "You're no fun. You never were. That's probably why—" She stopped herself, but Liam knew exactly what she'd been about to say. "That's probably why Vanessa left you." "I should probably head out soon anyway," Liam said. "Early morning tomorrow." "On a Sunday?" "Yeah, work stuff." It was a lie, and Rachel probably knew it, but she didn't push. She just shrugged and wandered off to find someone more interesting. Liam pulled out his phone. It was only 8:30. The reception was scheduled to go until 11, with fireworks at 10. If he left now, he'd miss the cake cutting, the bouquet toss, the last few hours of celebration. He'd also miss 3 more hours of feeling like a ghost at his own ex-wife's wedding. He stood up. He'd find Mia, tell her he had to go, make sure she was okay. Then he'd get in his car and drive home and try to forget this entire day had happened. He made it halfway across the tent before Vanessa intercepted him. "Leaving already?" She looked stunning in the low light, the crystals on her dress catching every reflection. "Yeah, early morning. On a Sunday? That's what I told your sister." Vanessa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm glad you came, Liam. Really. It means a lot to Mia. She's the only reason I'm here." "I know." She paused, and for a moment Liam saw something in her expression that looked almost like regret. But then it was gone. "You look good, by the way. New suit?" "Yeah." It's a significant improvement. And there it was. The dig. Even on her wedding day, even in the middle of her perfect celebration, Vanessa couldn't resist reminding him that he'd needed improvement. "Congratulations again," Liam said. "I hope you're very happy." "I will be." She said it with absolute certainty, like happiness was just another item on her checklist that she'd already marked complete. "Good." Liam started to walk away, but Vanessa caught his arm. Her grip was light, but it stopped him. "You know," she said quietly, "I really did love you. Once." Liam looked at her. At this woman he'd married, lived with, built a life with. This woman who'd given him the best thing in his life, his daughter, and then systematically dismantled everything else. "I know," he said, "but not enough." He pulled his arm free and walked away, and Vanessa didn't try to stop him again. He found Mia sitting at the kids' table, drinking punch and talking to another flower girl. She saw him coming and jumped up. "Dad, are you leaving?" "Yeah, kiddo, I've got an early morning." Her face fell. "But you'll miss the fireworks." "I know. I'm sorry." "Can't you stay just a little longer?" "I really can't." Mia looked down at her shoes, the white ones Vanessa had bought specifically for today, and Liam could see her trying not to cry. "Hey," he said, kneeling down so they were eye level. "Did you have fun today?" "Yeah." "Did you do a good job as flower girl?" "I think so." "You did. You were perfect. I was so proud of you." She looked up at him then, and her eyes were wet. "But you're leaving." "I have to, but I'll see you tomorrow when your mom drops you off, okay? And we can get ice cream, and you can tell me all about the rest of the party. Promise?" "Promise." She hugged him, fierce and tight, and Liam held her for a long moment before letting go. "Love you, kiddo." "Love you too, Dad." He stood up, gave her one last smile, and walked out of the tent before she could see his own eyes starting to burn. The parking lot was dark, lit only by a few decorative lanterns that cast long shadows across the gravel. Liam found his car, still wedged between the Mercedes and the Tesla, and got in. He sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady his breathing. He'd done it. He'd survived. It had been exactly as terrible as he'd feared, maybe worse, but he'd made it through. And Mia had seen him there. That was what mattered. Liam started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. In his rear-view mirror, he could see the Ashford estate lit up like a fairy tale. music and laughter drifting across the lawn. He drove down the long driveway through the gates and back toward the real world. The drive home took 40 minutes. Liam spent most of it replaying the evening in his head. Jonathan's toast, the pitying looks, the way he'd sat alone while everyone else danced, the way Vanessa had looked at him like he was a problem she'd successfully solved. By the time he pulled into his driveway, he felt hollowed out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. His house was dark, empty. Mia wouldn't be home until tomorrow afternoon. Liam let himself in, hung up the expensive suit, and stood in his kitchen in his undershirt and dress pants, staring at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from Mia. Made it through the cake cutting. It was chocolate. Wish you were here. He texted back. Glad you're having fun. See you tomorrow. Love you. Another buzz. This time from a number he didn't recognize. Mr. Carter, this is Richard Chen. I hope the suit served you well this evening. Best wishes. Liam stared at the message. The suit had been perfect. The suit had been the only thing about the entire night that hadn't made him feel like a failure. He texted back. It did. Thank you. Then he put his phone down and opened his refrigerator. There was leftover pizza from 3 days ago, some yogurt that might be expired, and a half-empty bottle of beer. He grabbed the beer, twisted off the cap, and leaned against the counter. This was his life. This small house with the roof that leaked. This kitchen where he ate standing up because it was easier than setting the table for one. This existence that had been completely overshadowed tonight by Jonathan Gregory Whitmore III and his houses in 3 states and his ability to make Liam feel like an afterthought at his own daughter's family event. The worst part was that Jonathan hadn't even been cruel about it. He'd been gracious, magnanimous. He'd acknowledged Liam publicly, thanked him for being there, raised a glass in his honor. And somehow that had been worse than any insult. Liam finished the beer and set the bottle in the sink. He should go to bed. It was late, and he was tired, and tomorrow he'd have Mia back and everything would feel better. But instead, he pulled out his phone and opened his email. There were 43 unread messages, most of them work-related. He scrolled through them automatically, flagging the ones that needed Aurora's attention, filing the ones that didn't. It was mindless, mechanical, something to occupy his brain so he didn't have to think about the wedding. One email caught his eye. It was from Aurora, sent at 7:15 that evening. The subject line was blank. Liam opened it. I hope you survived. A. He stared at the message for a long moment. It was so unlike Aurora to send something personal, something that acknowledged anything outside of work. She never asked how he was doing. She never checked in on his personal life. But she'd sent this. Tonight, while he was sitting in that tent surrounded by people who made him feel invisible. Liam hit reply and typed, Barely. Thank you for asking. He sent it before he could overthink it. Then he went upstairs, brushed his teeth, and lay down in bed with his clothes still on. He stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about Jonathan's toast or Vanessa's smile or the way every person in that tent had looked at him like he was someone to be pitied. His phone buzzed again. Another email from Aurora. You're stronger than you think you are. Liam read it 3 times. Then he put his phone on the nightstand and closed his eyes. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was stronger than he thought. But tonight, he didn't feel strong. He felt like he'd been run over by something large and indifferent, something that didn't even notice it had crushed him. He fell asleep still wearing his dress shirt, his tie loose around his neck, and dreamed of nothing at all. The next morning, Liam woke to sunlight streaming through his bedroom window and the vague sense that something was wrong. It took him a moment to remember the wedding, the toast, the drive home. He sat up and found himself still in his clothes from the night before, wrinkled and uncomfortable. He showered, changed into jeans and a t-shirt, and went downstairs to make coffee. The house felt too quiet without Mia, too empty. He made himself eggs and toast and ate at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone while he chewed. There were photos from the wedding already appearing on social media. Vanessa had created a hashtag, Jonathan and Vanessa, forever. And people were posting pictures of the ceremony, the reception, the cake cutting. Liam scrolled through them with a kind of detached curiosity. There was one of Mia scattering flower petals, her face serious with concentration. Another of Vanessa and Jonathan's first dance, several of the elaborate table settings. A group shot of all the groomsmen, all of them looking impossibly polished in their matching suits. And then, buried in the feed, a photo that made Liam's stomach twist. It was him. sitting alone at his table during dinner, staring at his plate while everyone around him talked to each other. Someone had taken it, probably without realizing he was in the frame, and posted it with the caption, "Beautiful night celebrating love." But all Liam could see was himself, isolated, awkward, exactly what he'd been afraid of looking like. He put his phone down and finished his coffee. Vanessa was dropping Mia off at 2. That gave him 4 hours to pull himself together, to put the wedding behind him, to be the father his daughter needed instead of the man who'd spent last night feeling sorry for himself. He cleaned the house, vacuumed the living room, did 2 loads of laundry, scrubbed the bathroom until it actually looked decent. He went to the grocery store and bought ingredients for Mia's favorite dinner, spaghetti and meatballs. Nothing fancy, but something she always asked for. At exactly 2 o'clock, a car pulled into his driveway. Not the town car from yesterday, Vanessa's own car, a sleek black SUV that probably had more features than Liam's house. She got out, and Mia tumbled out after her, still wearing her flower girl dress because apparently she'd refused to change. "Dad!" Mia ran toward him, and Liam caught her in a hug. "Hey, kiddo, how was the rest of the party?" "So fun! There were fireworks, and they spelled out V and J in the sky, and the cake had 5 layers, and I got to stay up until almost midnight." Liam looked over Mia's head at Vanessa, who was standing by her car looking immaculate despite having been at a wedding until late last night. "Thanks for bringing her back," he said. "Of course." Vanessa hesitated, then walked closer. "Liam, about last night, it's fine. Jonathan didn't mean to make you uncomfortable with the toast. He thought it would be nice to acknowledge, I said it's fine." Vanessa studied him for a moment. "You left early." "I had things to do." "On a Sunday morning?" "Yeah." She didn't believe him, but she didn't push. "Well, Mia had a wonderful time, didn't you, sweetheart?" Mia nodded enthusiastically. "It was the best wedding ever." "I'm glad." Liam squeezed Mia's shoulder. "Go inside and get changed. I'll be right there." Mia ran into the house, and Liam was left standing in the driveway with his ex-wife. "The suit was a good choice," Vanessa said. "You looked very put together." "Thanks." "I'm serious. You looked good, Liam. Better than I've seen you in a long time." He didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Vanessa sighed. "I know last night was hard for you. It was hard for me too, in a different way. But I meant what I said. I'm glad you came. Mia needed to see that we can all be adults about this." "We're not all adults about this," Liam said quietly. "You moved on. You found someone who gives you everything you wanted. I'm still here, in the same house, doing the same job, trying to figure out how to be enough for our daughter when she's starting to see that I wasn't enough for you." Vanessa's expression softened. "Liam, I should go. Mia's waiting." He turned and walked into the house before Vanessa could say anything else. Behind him, he heard her car door close, the engine start, the sound of gravel crunching as she drove away. Inside, Mia had changed into leggings and an oversized t-shirt and was sprawled on the couch. "Can we watch a movie?" she asked. "Sure, what do you want to watch?" "Something funny, no romance," Liam smiled. "Deal." They watched an animated movie about talking animals, and Mia fell asleep halfway through, her head on Liam's shoulder. He sat there, careful not to move, and watched her breathe. This was enough. This moment, this quiet afternoon, this little girl who still wanted to fall asleep next to him. This had to be enough, because it was all he had. Monday morning arrived with the same rain that had started the previous week, and Liam found himself right back in the familiar rhythm: burned toast, missing socks, Mia running late. Except this time, when he dropped her off at school, she turned back before going through the doors. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "You're not sad, are you? About the wedding?" The question caught him off guard. "Why would you think I'm sad?" "Because you got quiet yesterday, after Mom left. You get quiet when you're sad." Liam knelt down, ignoring the rain starting to soak through his suit jacket. "I'm not sad, kiddo. I promise. I'm just tired." "From the wedding?" "From a lot of things, but not sad. Okay?" She studied his face like she was trying to decide whether to believe him. Finally, she nodded. "Okay. Love you." "Love you too." He watched her run inside, and this time the doubt in her eyes seemed smaller. Or maybe he was just imagining what he wanted to see. The drive to Blake Enterprises felt longer than usual. Traffic was heavier, the rain was relentless, and Liam's mind kept circling back to the wedding, Jonathan's toast, sitting alone at that table, the photo someone had posted of him looking exactly as pathetic as he'd felt. He made it to the office at 8:02, which meant he was still technically late by Aurora's standards. But when he walked in, she wasn't at her desk yet. The lights in her office were off, her briefcase wasn't in its usual spot, and her coffee sat untouched exactly where Liam had left it. That never happened. Aurora was always early. Always. Liam checked his email. Nothing from her. He checked his phone. No messages. He was about to call her assistant coordinator when the elevator doors opened and Aurora stepped out. She looked different. Not bad, just different. Her hair was pulled back the same way it always was. Her suit was impeccable as always, but there was something in her expression, something Liam couldn't quite read. "Morning," she said, walking past his desk without stopping. "Morning. Your 8:15 with Singapore got moved to 9, and Marcus from accounting called again about the Q3 budget. I told him, I saw your emails, thank you." She disappeared into her office and closed the door. Liam stared after her. In 6 years, Aurora had never closed her door during business hours, unless she was on a sensitive call or meeting with someone important. And she definitely never cut him off mid-sentence. He sat at his desk and tried to focus on work. There were emails to answer, meetings to coordinate, a vendor contract that needed reviewing. But he kept glancing at Aurora's closed door, trying to figure out what had changed. At 9:30, she emerged. "Can you push my 11 o'clock back to 11:30? "Already done. I figured the Singapore call would run over." It did. She paused at his desk, and for the first time that morning, she actually looked at him. How was the wedding? The question surprised him. Aurora never asked about his personal life. Never. It was fine. "You're a terrible liar." "I survived. That's what matters." "Liam." She said his name quietly, almost gently. "Did you wear the suit?" "Yeah, it was perfect. Richard did an incredible job." "Good." She started to walk away, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I hope you know that showing up took courage. Most people wouldn't have done it." Before Liam could respond, she was gone, back in her office with the door open this time. He sat there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Aurora Blake didn't do compliments. She didn't acknowledge personal struggles. She definitely didn't use words like courage when talking about anything that wasn't a business decision. The rest of the morning passed normally. Aurora's 11:30 ran until 12:15. Liam ordered her lunch, the same salad she always got from the same place, and left it on her desk while she was on a conference call. He coordinated her afternoon schedule, resolved a scheduling conflict with the Berlin office, and personally tracked down the updated projections the CFO had promised 3 days ago. At 2 o'clock, Jennifer from HR stopped by his desk. "You okay? You seem off today." "I'm fine." That's what people say when they're not fine. Liam looked up at her. Jennifer had been at Blake Enterprises almost as long as he had, and she'd developed an annoying talent for reading people. "Just a rough weekend," he said. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." "Okay, but if you change your mind, I'm around." She glanced at Aurora's office. "Is she okay? She seems off too." "I wouldn't know." "Right. Because you two definitely don't have some weird telepathic thing going on where you anticipate her needs before she knows she has them." "That's literally my job, Jennifer." "No, your job is to manage her schedule and answer her emails. The rest of it, the knowing exactly what she needs, the solving problems before they exist, that's something else." Before Liam could argue, his phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. "Mia left her overnight bag at our place. Can you pick it up or should I drop it off?" He texted back, "I'll pick it up after work." Jennifer was still standing there. "Everything good?" "Yeah, just coordinating with my ex-wife." "Fun." A blast. She left, and Liam tried to focus on the vendor contract he was supposed to be reviewing, but his mind kept drifting back to the wedding, to Jonathan's house in 3 states, to the way Mia had asked if he was sad. At 5:30, Aurora called him into her office. "Close the door," she said. Liam did. That familiar knot of anxiety started forming in his chest. The closed door was never good news. "Sit," Aurora said. He sat. She was standing by her window, looking out at the city. The late afternoon light turned everything gold, and for a moment she looked less like a CEO and more like a person who was very, very tired. "I need to apologize," she said. "For what?" "For how I responded when you asked me to go to the wedding. I was dismissive. I made it about professional boundaries and appropriateness, and I didn't stop to consider what you were actually asking for." Liam had no idea what to say. Aurora Blake didn't apologize. She made decisions, she gave directives, she expected excellence, but she didn't apologize. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said carefully. "I did, though. You came to me for help, real help, and I shut you down without thinking about why you were asking. That was unfair. Aurora, you had every right to say no. It was an inappropriate request. Maybe. But you're not just my assistant, Liam. You're—" She paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "You're someone I respect, someone I trust. And when you asked me for something, I should have at least considered it instead of dismissing it immediately." "You did consider it, and you made the right call." She turned to look at him. "Did I? Because from what you just told me this morning, the wedding was exactly as difficult as you thought it would be. And you went through it alone. I'm used to doing things alone. That doesn't mean you should have to." The statement hung in the air between them. Liam felt something shift, not dramatically, not obviously, but enough that he noticed. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. Aurora walked back to her desk and sat down. For the first time in 6 years, she looked uncertain. "Because I've been thinking about what you said, about how your daughter sees you, about how you're afraid she's starting to see you the way your ex-wife did, as someone who wasn't enough. I shouldn't have said all that. It was unprofessional. It was honest." She folded her hands on her desk. "And it made me realize something. I've worked with you for 6 years, Liam. 6 years of you anticipating my needs, solving my problems, making my life easier in ways I don't even notice until they're done. And in all that time, I've never once asked you if you needed anything. Not once. That's not your job. Maybe not. But it says something about me, doesn't it? That I can be so focused on my own work, my own goals, that I don't see the people around me struggling." Liam didn't know how to respond to this. He'd never seen Aurora like this. Reflective, almost vulnerable. It felt like he'd walked into the wrong office, the wrong conversation. "You're not responsible for my personal problems," he said finally. "No, but I'm responsible for how I treat the people who work for me, and I could have been kinder when you asked for help." She picked up a pen, set it down again. "So I'm sorry for what it's worth. It's worth a lot, actually. Thank you." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the city was starting to light up as the sun set, thousands of windows turning gold and orange. "How bad was it?" Aurora asked quietly. "The wedding." Liam considered lying, considered saying it was fine, awkward, but manageable, nothing he couldn't handle. But something about the way Aurora was looking at him, really looking at him, not through him, made him tell the truth. "The groom gave a toast about me, thanking me for showing up, for being a good father, for creating the family that made their happiness possible. He said it took class to be there. That sounds like it was meant to be generous. It was. That's what made it worse. Because everyone in that room, 200 people, they all turned to look at me, and I could see it in their faces. The pity. The relief that they weren't me. And my daughter was there, watching all of it, seeing her father reduced to an honorable mention in someone else's love story." Aurora's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes did. "I'm sorry. It's fine. It's over. I survived it. Surviving isn't the same as being okay. No, but it's all I've got right now." Aurora stood and walked back to the window. "I underestimated what you were dealing with. I thought it was about pride, about not wanting to look bad. I didn't realize it was about your daughter, about how she sees you. Everything's about how she sees me. I'm all she has that's stable. Her mom has this whole new life now, the rich husband, the big house, the picture-perfect existence. And I'm just the guy who burns toast and works too much and can't afford to take her to Disneyland. You're also the guy who shows up, every day, who puts her first, even when it costs you. That doesn't feel like enough anymore. It is enough. You just can't see it yet." Liam looked at her, this woman who commanded boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, and wondered how she could possibly understand what he was going through. As if reading his mind, Aurora turned to face him. "My father left when I was 9. Just walked out one day and never came back. My mother raised me and my sister alone, working 2 jobs, barely keeping us fed. And I spent years angry at him. Years. Liam had never heard Aurora talk about her family. Never. But the older I got, she continued, the more I realized I wasn't angry that he left. I was angry that he didn't fight to stay. That he chose the easy way out instead of doing the hard work of being present, of being enough even when it felt impossible. She looked directly at Liam. You're doing the hard work. Your daughter will understand that eventually. What if she doesn't? Then you keep showing up anyway. Because that's what love looks like. The words settled over Liam like a weight. He wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that showing up was enough, that Mia would see past the small house and the modest income, and the fact that her father couldn't compete with Jonathan Gregory Whitmore III. I should let you get back to work, he said, standing. Liam, he stopped at the door. If you ever need to talk, Aurora said, about anything, not just work, I'm here. I may not be good at it, but I'm here. Thank you. That means more than you know. He left her office and went back to his desk, and for the rest of the afternoon he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between them. After work, Liam drove to Vanessa's new house to pick up Mia's overnight bag. The house was in a gated community 20 minutes outside the city, the kind of neighborhood where every lawn was perfect and every house looked like it had been designed by the same architect. Jonathan's house, Vanessa's house now, he supposed, was at the end of a cul-de-sac, a sprawling modern structure with floor-to-ceiling windows and a 3-car garage. Liam pulled into the driveway and immediately felt out of place. His sedan looked like a toy next to the Range Rover and the BMW parked in the open garage. He texted Vanessa, I'm here. A minute later, the front door opened and Vanessa came out carrying Mia's purple overnight bag. She was wearing yoga pants and a fitted top, her hair in a ponytail, and she looked effortlessly put together even in casual clothes. Thanks for coming to get this, she said, handing him the bag through the car window. Mia was upset she forgot it. No problem. Vanessa glanced back at the house, then leaned against Liam's car. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you okay? You seemed off at the wedding, and when you dropped Mia off yesterday, you seemed, I don't know, defeated. I'm fine. Liam. I said I'm fine, Vanessa. She crossed her arms. You're allowed to be not fine, you know. It was a difficult situation. You mean watching my ex-wife marry a man who has everything I don't? Yeah, that was a little difficult. That's not fair, isn't it? Come on, Vanessa. Jonathan has 3 houses. 3. I have one house that I can barely afford, with a roof that leaks and a kitchen that hasn't been updated since 1987. He drives cars that cost more than I make in a year. He gave Mia an iPad for her birthday like it was nothing. And I'm over here trying to decide if I can afford to take her to the movies this weekend. Money isn't everything. Liam laughed, sharp and bitter. Easy to say when you have it. I didn't marry Jonathan for his money. No, you married him because he can give you the life you always wanted, the life I couldn't give you. Vanessa's expression hardened. Is that what you think? That I left you because you didn't make enough money? Didn't you? I left you because you had no ambition, because you were content to stay in the same job, the same house, the same life forever. I wanted more. Not more money, more everything. More adventure, more excitement, more possibility. And you wanted safe. I wanted stable, for our daughter. Stable is another word for stuck, Liam, and I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life stuck. They stared at each other across the car, years of resentment and hurt rising to the surface. I should go, Liam said. Wait. Vanessa softened slightly. I didn't mean that the way it sounded. You're a good father. You've always been a good father, but you and I wanted different things. We still want different things. And that's okay. Is it? It has to be, for Mia's sake. Liam put the car in reverse. Tell Jonathan thanks for the toast. It was very generous of him. Liam. But he was already backing out of the driveway, already leaving before he said something he'd regret. The drive home was a blur. By the time Liam pulled into his own driveway, his small, modest, leaking roof driveway, he felt wrung out. He sat in the car for a long moment, staring at his house, wondering when it had started feeling like a monument to everything he'd failed to achieve. His phone buzzed. An email from Aurora. Stop beating yourself up. You're doing better than you think. A. Liam read it 3 times. Then he got out of the car, grabbed Mia's bag, and went inside. The rest of the week passed in a strange haze. Work continued as normal, meetings, emails, crises that Liam solved before they reached Aurora's desk. But something had changed between them. Aurora asked him how he was doing, actually asked, and waited for a real answer. She thanked him for things she used to take for granted. She even bought him coffee one morning when she stopped at the cafe downstairs, which had never happened in 6 years. "I was already getting one for myself," she said when he looked surprised. "It's not a big deal." But it was a big deal. Because Aurora Blake didn't do things without a reason. On Thursday afternoon, Liam was reviewing Aurora's schedule for the following week when she emerged from a meeting looking frustrated. "Problem?" he asked. "The Tokyo team wants to move the quarterly review to next Friday, which conflicts with the board meeting. I can call them and explain that you're not available. They're insisting. Apparently it's the only time the entire executive team can meet." Liam pulled up the calendar. "What if we move the board meeting to Thursday? Everyone's already in town for the strategy session that morning. We could extend it into the afternoon." Aurora considered this. "That could work, but Margaret won't like it. She has plans Thursday evening." "Margaret always has plans. She'll reschedule?" "You seem very confident about that." "I am. Margaret likes you more than she likes her plans." Aurora almost smiled. "Fine. Make it happen." Liam spent the next hour coordinating with board members, rescheduling the Tokyo call, and personally calling Margaret to explain the change. By 5 o'clock, everything was sorted. "Done," he said, walking into Aurora's office. "Thursday at 2. Everyone confirmed except David, who's still on a plane, but his assistant said he'll be there." "Thank you. Just doing my job." Aurora looked up from her computer. "No, you do more than your job. You always have." Liam didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and went back to his desk. At 6:30, when most of the office had cleared out, Aurora stopped at his desk on her way out. "Do you have plans tonight?" she asked. "Just picking up Mia from Vanessa's at 7. "Why?" "No reason. I was just curious." She started to leave, then turned back. "Liam, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you ever think about doing something else? Something other than being an assistant?" The question caught him completely off guard. "Sometimes. Why?" "Because you're better than this job. You could be doing more." "I like this job." "Do you? Or is it just safe?" Liam thought about Vanessa's words from earlier in the week. Stable is another word for stuck. "I'm good at it," he said carefully. "You're exceptional at it, but that doesn't mean it's where you should stay forever." "Are you trying to get rid of me?" "No. I'm trying to make you see what I see. Someone capable of much more than coordinating my calendar and solving vendor disputes." "Aurora." "Just think about it. That's all I'm asking." She left before he could respond, and Liam sat at his desk for another 10 minutes, staring at nothing. What did he want? He had been so focused on surviving, on being enough for Mia, on keeping his job, on not falling apart after the divorce, that he'd never stopped to ask himself what he actually wanted. He packed up his things and headed to Vanessa's house to pick up Mia. When he arrived, she came running out with her backpack, still in her school uniform. "Dad, guess what?" "What?" "Mom and Jonathan are taking me to Paris next month, for a whole week. There's going to be croissants and the Eiffel Tower, and we're staying in a hotel with a pool on the roof." Liam forced a smile. "That sounds amazing, kiddo. Have you ever been to Paris?" "No?" "Maybe you could come visit sometime. You and me. Just us." Maybe. But they both knew he couldn't afford a trip to Paris. Couldn't afford the plane ticket, the hotel, the time off work. Couldn't compete with Jonathan's effortless generosity, his ability to give Mia experiences that Liam could only dream about. On the drive home, Mia chattered about Paris, about the things she wanted to see, about how Jonathan had promised to take her to Disneyland Paris. Liam listened and nodded and tried to ignore the growing pit in his stomach. When they got home, Mia went upstairs to do homework, and Liam stood in his kitchen, staring at the refrigerator covered in Mia's drawings and report cards and permission slips. This was his life, this small house, this modest existence, this constant feeling of falling short. His phone buzzed. Another email from Aurora. "Stop comparing yourself to people who started with advantages you never had. You're building something real that matters more than you know. A. Liam read the message and felt something crack open in his chest. Not breaking, just opening, like a door he didn't know was locked. He texted back, "How do you always know exactly what I'm thinking?" Her response came a minute later. "Because I pay attention. Someone should." Liam stared at the message for a long time. Then he put his phone down and went upstairs to help Mia with her homework. And for the first time in weeks, the weight on his chest felt just a little bit lighter. Friday arrived with clear skies and the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. Liam got Mia to school on time, made it to the office by 7:55, and had Aurora's coffee ready before she arrived at 8. The morning passed quickly. Aurora had back-to-back meetings, and Liam coordinated a conference call with the Singapore team, resolved a payment dispute with a vendor in Munich, and personally tracked down the missing files the legal department had been asking about for 3 days. At noon, Aurora emerged from her office and stopped at his desk. "I need you to do something for me," she said. "Of course. What do you need?" "I need you to take the afternoon off." Liam looked up at her. "What?" "You heard me. Take the afternoon off, go home, spend time with your daughter, do something that has nothing to do with work." "Aurora, I have your 3 o'clock with the CFO, and the vendor contract needs—" "I can handle my own 3 o'clock, and the vendor contract can wait until Monday. Take the afternoon off, Liam." "Why?" She sat on the edge of his desk, something she'd never done before. "Because in 6 years, you've never taken a sick day. You've never left early. You've never asked for time off that wasn't already scheduled. And I just realized that's not dedication. It's fear." "Fear of what?" "Fear that if you're not indispensable, you'll be disposable." The words hit harder than Liam expected. He opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. "You're not disposable," Aurora said quietly. "You never were, so go home. Be with your daughter. I'll see you Monday." She stood and walked back into her office, and Liam sat there, stunned. After a moment, he packed up his things and left. He picked up Mia from school early, which delighted her, and they went to get ice cream even though it was barely 1 in the afternoon. They sat in the park, eating their cones, and Mia told him about a project she was working on about the solar system. "Jupiter has this big red spot," she said, "and it's actually a storm that's been going for hundreds of years." "That's pretty cool." "Yeah, but kind of sad too. Like imagine being stormy for that long." Liam looked at his daughter, this bright, thoughtful little person, and felt something shift. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. "You're pretty smart. You know that?" he said. "I know. Mom says I get it from her." "What about me? Do you get anything from me?" Mia thought about this seriously. "You're good at fixing things, and you never give up, even when things are hard." "Is that a good thing?" "Yeah, it's my favorite thing about you." Liam felt his throat tighten. "Thanks, kiddo." They finished their ice cream and walked home, and for the first time in what felt like months, Liam wasn't thinking about the wedding, or Jonathan, or the ways he kept falling short. He was just there, present, with his daughter. And maybe that was enough. That weekend passed quietly, almost peacefully. Liam and Mia made pancakes on Saturday morning, burning the first batch, getting the second one mostly right, and spent the afternoon at the library. Mia picked out 5 books about space, and Liam grabbed a thriller he'd never have time to read but felt obligated to check out anyway. On Sunday, they did laundry together, and Mia told him about Madison Brenner's birthday party next weekend, which was going to be at some indoor trampoline place that cost $40 per kid. "Do you want to go?" Liam asked, folding one of her shirts. "I don't know. Madison's kind of mean sometimes." "Then why would you go to her party?" "Because everyone else is going, and if I don't go, I'll be the only one who didn't." Liam understood that logic more than he wanted to admit. "Well, if you decide you want to go, we'll make it work." "Even though it's $40? "Even though it's $40. Mia smiled and went back to folding her socks in the specific way she insisted was correct, and Liam added another item to the mental list of things he couldn't really afford but would figure out anyway. Monday morning, he was back at his desk by 7:58, coffee ready, inbox sorted, Aurora's briefing notes printed and waiting. When she arrived at 8, she glanced at him and shook her head. "You're incapable of taking it easy, aren't you?" "Good morning to you, too." "I gave you Friday afternoon off. That was supposed to be a message." I got the message. I spent time with Mia. We had ice cream. It was nice. And now you're right back here at 8 in the morning like nothing happened. Because this is my job, Aurora. This is what I do. She studied him for a moment and Liam couldn't read her expression. Finally, she just shook her head again and took her coffee. We need to talk later. My office. After the 2 o'clock. Is something wrong? No, just be there. She disappeared into her office and Liam spent the rest of the morning trying not to worry about what we need to talk meant. In his experience, those 4 words never led anywhere good. The morning crawled by. Aurora had a meeting with the board at 9, a conference call with London at 10:30, and a working lunch with the VP of Operations at noon. Liam coordinated all of it, solved a scheduling conflict with the Frankfurt office, and personally tracked down the market analysis report that Aurora needed for her 2 o'clock presentation. At exactly 2 o'clock, Aurora's meeting started. Liam could see her through the glass walls of the conference room, presenting data with the kind of confidence that made people sit up straighter. At 2:45, the meeting ended, and Aurora headed straight for her office. She stopped at his desk. Come on. Liam followed her in, and she closed the door behind them. Sit, she said. He sat. The knot in his stomach tightened. Aurora didn't sit. She stood by her window, arms crossed, looking out at the city. After a long moment, she spoke. I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. If you could do anything, any job, any career, anywhere, what would it be? Liam blinked. What? You heard me? If money wasn't an issue, if you didn't have to worry about stability or benefits or supporting your daughter, what would you actually want to do? I don't understand where this is coming from. Just answer the question. Liam thought about it. Really thought about it. When was the last time someone had asked him what he wanted? Not what he needed, not what was practical, but what he actually wanted. I don't know, he said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. I've spent so long focused on surviving that I forgot to think about anything else. Aurora turned to face him. That's what I thought. And that's why I'm going to make you an offer. An offer? I want to promote you, move you out of the assistant role and into something where you can actually use your brain for more than just coordinating my schedule. Liam's heart started racing. Aurora? Before you say anything, hear me out. You're wasted as an assistant. You're smart, you're strategic, you see problems before they happen and solve them before they become crises. I've watched you do it for 6 years, and it's time someone gave you credit for it. I appreciate that, but there's an opening in operations, senior strategic analyst. It's a real position with real responsibilities. You'd be working on acquisitions, market analysis, long-term planning, and the pay is almost double what you're making now. Liam felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Double? Plus better benefits. And you'd have a team. People reporting to you instead of you reporting to someone else. It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. Why are you doing this? Liam asked. Because you deserve it. Because I should have done it years ago. And because I'm tired of watching you settle for less than you're worth. I'm not settling. I like being your assistant. Do you? Or is it just safe? There it was again, that word, safe. The same word Vanessa had used, except when Vanessa said it, it was an accusation. When Aurora said it, it sounded like concern. I can't take that job, Liam said. Why not? Because I don't know how to do it. I've been an assistant for 6 years. I coordinate schedules and answer emails and solve small problems. I don't do acquisitions or market analysis or, you absolutely do. You just don't realize it. Every time you've researched a vendor, that's market analysis. Every time you've negotiated a contract, that's strategic thinking. Every time you've coordinated a multi-department project, that's operations management. You've been doing the work already. This just gives you the title and the pay to match. Liam wanted to believe her, wanted to believe he was capable of more than what he'd been doing. But the fear was stronger. The fear of failing, of proving Vanessa right, of losing the one thing that had been stable in his life. I need to think about it, he said. Fair. But Liam? Aurora's expression softened. At some point, you're going to have to stop being afraid of what happens if you try and fail. Because staying where you are just to avoid failing, that's failing too. She walked back to her desk and pulled out a folder. This is the job description. Read it, think about it, and let me know by Friday. Liam took the folder and left her office, his mind spinning. The rest of the week was a blur. Liam went through the motions of his job while secretly reading and rereading the job description Aurora had given him. Senior Strategic Analyst. It sounded important. It sounded like someone who knew what they were doing. It didn't sound like him. But the salary did something to him. The number sat in his brain like a beacon. With that kind of money, he could fix the roof. He could take Mia to Disneyland. He could stop choosing between field trips and car repairs. He could breathe. On Wednesday night, he was helping Mia with her homework when she asked him a question that stopped him cold. "Dad, are we poor?" Liam looked up from the math worksheet he'd been checking. "What?" Madison said her mom said that people who live in old houses like ours are poor. "Are we poor?" Liam set down his pen carefully. Madison's mom doesn't know what she's talking about. But are we? We're not rich, kiddo, but we're not poor either. We have everything we need. But not everything we want. Nobody has everything they want. Not really. Mia chewed on her pencil, thinking. Jonathan has everything he wants. How do you know that? Because Mom said so. She said Jonathan worked really hard and now he can have anything he wants. Liam felt that familiar twist in his chest. Well, good for Jonathan. Did you work hard? Yeah, I work hard every day. Then why can't you have what you want? It was an innocent question, an 8-year-old's logic, but it cut deeper than anything Vanessa or Jonathan or anyone at that wedding had said. It's complicated, kiddo. That's what adults say when they don't want to explain. Liam couldn't help but smile. You're too smart for your own good, you know that? I know, so what's the real answer? He thought about how to explain it. How some people started with advantages. How success wasn't just about hard work. How the world wasn't as fair as we wanted it to be. But Mia was 8. She didn't need that burden yet. The real answer is that I do have what I want. I have you, and that's more important than anything else. But wouldn't it be nice to have other stuff too? Yeah, it would be nice. Mia went back to her homework, satisfied with that answer, and Liam sat there thinking about Aurora's offer, about what it would mean to take a risk, about what it would mean to stay safe. On Thursday, Vanessa called him. I need to talk to you about Mia's schedule. What about it? Jonathan and I want to take her to Paris the second week of October, which is technically your week. I was hoping we could switch. Liam pulled up the custody calendar on his phone. That's fall break. I already took those days off work. I know, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her. The Paris trip. We've already booked the flights. Without asking me first? Liam, don't make this difficult. It's Paris. What were you planning to do with her for fall break? Take her to the same park you always go to? The comment stung because it was true. He had been planning to take her to the park. Maybe the science museum if he could afford the admission. Nothing that compared to Paris. I'll think about it, he said. What's there to think about? Do you really want to be the father who kept his daughter from Paris? I want to be the father she spends time with. Remember me? The guy who's supposed to matter? Of course you matter. But you matter here too. In the decisions we make for her future, in the experiences she gets to have. And Paris is an experience she'll remember forever. Liam closed his eyes. When do you need to know? By tomorrow. The tickets are refundable until then. Fine, I'll let you know tomorrow. He hung up and sat at his kitchen table, staring at nothing. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Mia's question, are we poor? And Vanessa's implication that he was holding their daughter back from opportunities. He kept thinking about the job Aurora had offered him, about the salary that could change everything, about the risk of leaving something safe for something unknown. At 2 a.m, he gave up on sleep and went downstairs. He made coffee and sat in the dark kitchen, the job description folder open on the table in front of him. His phone buzzed. A text from Aurora. You're awake, aren't you? Stop overthinking. The answer is yes, take the job. He texted back. How do you know I'm awake? Because I know you. You're sitting in your kitchen, drinking bad coffee, making a list of all the reasons you're not qualified. You are qualified. Take the job. What if I fail? What if you don't? Liam stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed, I'll give you my answer tomorrow. I already know your answer. You're just afraid to say it out loud. She was right. He knew she was right. but knowing it and doing something about it were two different things. Friday morning, Liam dropped Mia at school and drove to work on autopilot. He'd made his decision about the job, but he still needed to tell Aurora, and he needed to call Vanessa about Paris. He got to the office early and found Aurora already there, which was unusual. She was standing at his desk, looking at something on his computer screen. "Morning," he said. She turned. "Morning. I was just checking your calendar. You have me in back-to-back meetings from 9 to 3. When exactly was I supposed to eat lunch?" "I scheduled a working lunch with the CFO at 12:30. You said you wanted to discuss the Q4 projections. I said I wanted to review them, not during lunch." "I'll fix it." "No, it's fine. I'm just giving you a hard time." She paused. "Have you made a decision?" "About the job?" "No." "About what to have for dinner?" "Yes, about the job." Liam set down his briefcase. "I want to say yes, I really do. But I need to ask you something first." "Go ahead." "If I take this job and I'm terrible at it, what happens?" "You won't be terrible at it." "But if I am," Aurora crossed her arms, "then we'll figure it out. We'll get you training, mentorship, whatever you need. But Liam, you need to understand something. I don't offer promotions to people I don't believe in. I'm not doing you a favor. I'm making a strategic decision for this company. You're good at what you do. It's time you got credit for it." "Okay. Okay. You'll think about it? Or okay, you'll take the job?" "Okay. I'll take the job." Aurora's face broke into something that almost looked like a smile. "Good. I'll have HR draw up the paperwork. You start in 2 weeks." "2 weeks?" "I need time to find someone to replace you, and you need time to transition out of your current role. Speaking of which, I'm going to be impossible to work with for the next 2 weeks. Just warning you." "You're always impossible to work with." "True, but now I'll be impossible and sad about losing the best assistant I've ever had." Liam felt something warm spread through his chest. "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." "Someone had to." She picked up her coffee. "Now get to work. Those meetings won't coordinate themselves." The rest of the day passed in a strange haze. Liam went through his usual routine, emails, phone calls, putting out fires, but everything felt different now. Like he was looking at his job from the outside, seeing it for what it was, instead of what he'd convinced himself it had to be. At lunch, he stepped outside and called Vanessa. "I thought about the Paris trip," he said when she answered. "And?" "She can go." "Really? I thought you'd fight me on this." "I thought about it, and you're right. It's an experience she'll remember forever. I don't want to be the reason she misses out on that." There was a pause on the other end. "Thank you, Liam. Really. I know that wasn't easy." "No, it wasn't, but it's the right thing. For what it's worth, you're a good father. I don't say that enough." "Thanks, Vanessa." He hung up and stood there on the sidewalk, feeling the October sun on his face, and realized that for the first time in months, he didn't feel like he was drowning. He felt like he was treading water, which wasn't the same as swimming, but it was better than sinking. That evening, he told Mia about Paris. She screamed with excitement and hugged him so hard he thought his ribs might crack. "This is the best thing ever! Can I bring my camera and my journal? Oh, I need to learn some French words." "You've got 3 weeks. I'm sure you can learn a few words." She ran upstairs to start making a list of everything she needed to pack, and Liam sat on the couch, feeling the quiet of the house settle around him. His phone buzzed. Another text from Aurora. "Proud of you. For the job and for Paris. You're doing the hard thing instead of the easy thing. That takes courage." He texted back, "I learned it from you." "No, you always had it. You just needed someone to point it out." The next 2 weeks were chaos. Liam trained his replacement, a sharp young woman named Claire who asked good questions and took detailed notes, while simultaneously trying to prepare for his new role. Aurora was, as promised, impossible to work with, constantly checking in on him, making sure Claire was learning everything correctly, and occasionally looking at him like she was already regretting her decision to promote him. "You're not allowed to fail at this," she said one afternoon while reviewing the transition plan. "No pressure." "I'm serious. If you fail, it makes me look bad. And I don't look bad. I'll try not to embarrass you." "See that you don't." But there was warmth in her voice, something that hadn't been there before, something that felt almost like friendship. On his last day as Aurora's assistant, She called him into her office at 5 o'clock. The rest of the building had mostly cleared out, and the late afternoon light turned everything gold. "I wanted to give you something," she said, handing him a small wrapped box. "You didn't have to do that." "Open it." Inside was a pen. Not just any pen, an expensive one, the kind that came in a wooden case with a brass nameplate engraved with his name. "For all the contracts you're going to negotiate," Aurora said, "and all the deals you're going to close." Liam felt his throat tighten. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you've survived your first quarter." "I'll do my best." Aurora stood and walked to the window. "You know, when I first hired you, I thought you were overqualified for the assistant role. But you seemed like you needed it, so I didn't push. I should have pushed. I should have seen years ago that you were capable of more." "I wasn't ready years ago." "Maybe not, but you're ready now." She turned to face him. "Don't waste it, Liam. Don't play it safe just because safe feels comfortable. You've got talent. Use it." "I will." "Good." She picked up her briefcase. "Now get out of here. Go home to your daughter. Monday, you start fresh, and I expect you to hit the ground running." "Yes, ma'am." "And Liam, thank you for 6 years of making my life easier. I didn't appreciate it enough, but I do now." He nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and left her office for the last time as her assistant. That weekend, Liam helped Mia pack for Paris. They made lists, checked them twice, and then made new lists when she decided she needed completely different clothes. On Saturday night, they ordered pizza and watched a movie, and Mia fell asleep on the couch with her head on his shoulder. Liam sat there, careful not to wake her, and thought about everything that had changed in the past month. The wedding that had felt like rock bottom, the job offer that felt like a second chance, the slowly growing sense that maybe he wasn't as stuck as he'd thought. Sunday afternoon, Vanessa came to pick up Mia for the Paris trip. She arrived in Jonathan's Range Rover, and Mia loaded her suitcase into the back while chattering about all the things she wanted to see. "We'll take good care of her," Vanessa said to Liam. "I know you will. And I'll make sure she calls you every day. I'd appreciate that." Vanessa hesitated, then said, "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." Liam was surprised she knew. "Thanks. How'd you hear about it?" "Rachel knows someone who works at Blake Enterprises. Word travels." She smiled, and for once it looked genuine. "I'm glad, Liam. Really. You deserve it." "Thanks." Mia hugged him goodbye, promised to bring him back something from Paris, and climbed into the car. Liam watched them drive away, and instead of feeling empty, he felt something else. Hope. Monday morning, Liam arrived at Blake Enterprises as a senior strategic analyst. He had a new office, small, but with a door and a window, and a desk that didn't face anyone else's. Claire had taken over his old position, and Aurora had already started treating her with the same exacting standards she'd used with Liam. His first assignment was to analyze a potential acquisition in the tech sector. The file was 3 inches thick, full of financial data and market projections and legal documents. Liam looked at it and felt a wave of panic. Then he opened it and started reading. By lunch, he'd made it through half the documents and started a preliminary analysis. By 3, he'd identified 3 major red flags that the initial assessment had missed. By 5, he'd written a 10-page report recommending against the acquisition. He sent it to Aurora and waited. 10 minutes later, she appeared at his office door. "This is good," she said, holding his report. "Really? Really? You caught things our acquisition team missed. I'm forwarding this to the board." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She leaned against the doorframe. "See? I told you that you could do this. It's only the first day, and you're already proving me right. Keep it up." She left, and Liam sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. The week passed quickly. Liam dove into his new role, working on analysis projects, sitting in on strategy meetings, contributing ideas that people actually listened to. It was harder than being an assistant, more pressure, more visibility, more ways to fail. But it was also more rewarding. Every night, Mia called from Paris. She told him about the Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, the crepes she'd eaten for breakfast. She sent him pictures of everything, and Liam saved every single one. On Thursday night, she called with big news. "Dad, you won't believe what happened." "What?" "Jonathan took us to this really fancy restaurant. And there was this woman there who recognized Mom from college, and they started talking, and it turns out this woman works for some big fashion company in New York. And she asked Mom if she wanted to do some consulting work, and Mom said yes, and now we might move to New York. Liam's heart stopped. What? Isn't that crazy? New York, like actual New York. Yeah, crazy. He tried to keep his voice steady. Does that mean you'd move there too? I don't know, maybe. Mom said we'd have to figure it out, but it would be so cool to live in New York. After they hung up, Liam sat in his kitchen, staring at nothing. New York. If Mia moved to New York, he'd lose half his time with her. Maybe more. Custody agreements didn't work well across state lines. Vanessa would have all the leverage, the money, the resources, the ability to give Mia experiences he never could. He pulled out his phone and texted Aurora. Need advice, can I call you? She responded immediately. Call now. He did. She answered on the first ring. What's wrong? He explained about New York, about the possibility of losing Mia, about feeling like he was back at the wedding all over again, watching his ex-wife build a life that eclipsed his completely. Aurora listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Liam, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it. You are not the same man who went to that wedding a month ago. You're not the man who sat alone at that table while everyone pitied you. You took a risk. You took the job. You proved you're capable of more. And if Vanessa tries to take Mia away, you fight. You don't give up. You don't assume you've already lost. What if I can't win? Then you fight anyway, because that's what parents do. They fight for their kids even when the odds are against them. I'm scared. I know, but you're also stronger than you think. You've already proven that. They talked for another 20 minutes, and by the time they hung up, Liam felt steadier. Not confident, exactly, but steadier. Friday afternoon, Vanessa called. We need to talk about Mia. I'm listening. The New York opportunity is real. Jonathan has contacts there, and they want me to start in January, which means we'd be moving at the end of December. And Mia? She'd come with us, obviously. Nothing about this is obvious, Vanessa. We have joint custody. You can't just move her across the country without discussing it with me. I am discussing it with you, right now. No, you're telling me. That's different. There was a long pause. What do you want me to say, Liam? That I'll turn down this opportunity because it's inconvenient for you? I want you to acknowledge that I'm her father, that I matter, that my time with her matters. Of course it matters. But this is a huge opportunity for our family. Your family, not mine. Liam, I'll talk to a lawyer, figure out my options. You're not seriously going to fight me on this. Watch me. He hung up before she could respond. Then he sat at his desk, heart pounding, and realized he'd just drawn a line in the sand. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't backing down. The lawyer's office smelled like old books and expensive wood polish. Liam sat across from a woman named Patricia Greenfield who had 30 years of family law experience and a reputation for not backing down. She listened while he explained the situation, Vanessa's move to New York, the custody arrangement, his fear of losing Mia. Here's the reality, Patricia said when he finished. She can't just take your daughter across state lines without your consent or a court order. The custody agreement is binding. If she wants to move, she either needs your permission or she needs to petition the court to modify custody. And courts don't look kindly on parents who try to unilaterally uproot children. So I have options? You have leverage, which is better than options. She leaned forward. But I need to ask you something. What do you actually want here? Do you want to stop the move entirely, or do you want to ensure you maintain significant custody? Liam thought about Mia's excitement on the phone, talking about New York. He thought about the opportunities Vanessa could give her there, the experiences, the life. I don't want to hold her back, he said slowly. I just don't want to disappear from her life. Then we negotiate. We make sure that whatever happens, you're still her father in practice, not just on paper. Over the next week, Patricia handled the legal communications while Liam focused on his new job and waited for Mia to come home from Paris. The waiting was the hardest part. Not knowing what would happen, not being able to control the outcome, not being certain if fighting was brave or selfish. On Tuesday afternoon, Aurora found him staring at his computer screen without actually seeing anything on it. You're doing it again, she said from his doorway. Doing what? overthinking yourself into paralysis. She came in and closed the door. Talk to me. There's nothing to say. I hired a lawyer. We're negotiating. Now I wait. That's the facts. What about what you're feeling? Liam looked at her, this woman who a month ago had been his boss and nothing more, and now somehow had become the person he told things to. I'm terrified, he admitted. Terrified that no matter what I do, I'm going to lose her. Not all at once, but slowly. Birthday parties I'll miss because I can't afford to fly to New York every month. School plays I won't see. Homework I can't help with because she's not here. And one day she'll realize that her life is there, with them, and I'm just the guy she visits sometimes. Aurora sat down across from him. You want to know what I see? I see a man who showed up to a wedding that humiliated him because his daughter needed him there. I see someone who took a job that scared him because he wanted to give her a better life. I see a father who's willing to fight for his kid even when the odds are stacked against him. That's not someone who's going to disappear from her life. That's someone who's going to fight like hell to stay in it. What if fighting isn't enough? Then you fight harder. She paused. Liam, I told you about my father leaving. What I didn't tell you is that my mother had chances to make things easier for herself. Men who wanted to marry her, job opportunities in other cities, a whole life she could have built without us. But she stayed. She fought. She chose us every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That's what Mia will remember. Not whether you had as much money as Jonathan or took her to as many places. She'll remember that you chose her every time. Liam felt something break open in his chest. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't give up. That night, Mia came home from Paris. Vanessa dropped her off, and Mia ran into the house with her suitcase, talking a mile a minute about everything she'd seen. She gave Liam a small Eiffel Tower keychain and a box of French chocolates, and showed him approximately 400 photos on her camera. It was the best trip ever, Dad. The best. I'm glad, kiddo. After she'd gone upstairs to unpack, Liam walked Vanessa back to her car. Your lawyer called mine, she said. I know. You're really going to fight me on this? I'm really going to make sure I don't lose my daughter. Vanessa's expression softened. I never wanted to take her away from you, Liam. I just want to give her opportunities. So do I. That's why I'm fighting. Not against the move, but for my place in her life. What are you proposing? Summer with me. Every summer, not negotiable. Plus every other major holiday. And regular visits, at least one weekend a month, alternating who travels. I'll fly to New York when it's my turn. You bring her here when it's yours. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. That's more than the current custody arrangement. I know, but if you're taking her 3,000 miles away, I need more than what we have now, not less. Let me talk to Jonathan. This isn't about Jonathan. This is about Mia. About you and me being her parents, no matter where either of us lives. She nodded slowly. Okay, let me think about it. Think fast, because if we can't agree, we go to court. And I promise you, Vanessa, I will fight this with everything I have. She drove away, and Liam went back inside, where Mia was showing him a drawing she'd made of the Arc de Triomphe. 3 days later, Vanessa's lawyer called Patricia with a counteroffer. It was close to what Liam had asked for. Not exactly, but close enough that Patricia recommended accepting it. You won, she told him. Not everything, but the important things. You're still her father. That's what matters. When Liam told Mia about the arrangement, she cried. Not sad tears, but relieved ones. I thought you'd be mad about New York, she said. I'm not mad. Change is hard, but we'll figure it out. We always do. Promise you won't stop being my dad? Mia. He pulled her close. I couldn't stop being your dad if I tried. That's not how this works. You're stuck with me forever. She laughed through her tears and hugged him tighter. The months that followed were an adjustment. Liam threw himself into his new job, proving Aurora right with every project he completed. He negotiated his first major acquisition in November, a tech startup that fit perfectly into Blake Enterprises' portfolio, and Aurora sent him an email that just said, "Told you so," with a champagne bottle emoji. Mia moved to New York 2 days after Christmas. Saying goodbye was one of the hardest things Liam had ever done, but he put on a brave face and reminded her about their first visit in January. That night, alone in his house for the first time in years, Liam sat at his kitchen table and let himself feel everything he'd been holding back. The grief of watching his daughter leave, the pride at how brave she'd been, the fear that he'd somehow still lose her despite the legal agreements and promises. His phone buzzed, a text from Aurora. "You did good today. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did." He texted back, "Doesn't feel like anything right now. Give it time. And remember, you're not doing this alone." Over the next few months, Liam found a rhythm. Work during the week, video calls with Mia every night, flights to New York twice a month. It wasn't the same as having her in the next room, but it was enough. More than enough. And slowly, something else changed too. Aurora started joining him for lunch sometimes. Not in a formal way, just occasionally sitting at his desk with her salad while he ate his sandwich, talking about things that had nothing to do with work. She asked about Mia. He asked about her life outside the office, which she deflected but sometimes, rarely, actually answered. In March, she invited him to a charity gala the company was sponsoring. "I need someone there who actually knows what they're talking about if anyone asks about the tech acquisition," she said. "Plus, you clean up well. I saw the wedding suit, remember?" Liam went. He wore the same suit Richard had made, and when he arrived at the hotel ballroom where the gala was being held, Aurora was waiting near the entrance. She was wearing a dark blue dress that was somehow both elegant and understated, and when she saw him, something in her expression shifted. "You came," she said. "You invited me." "I did. But you could have said no." "Why would I say no?" She smiled, small and genuine. "Come on, let's survive this thing together." They spent the evening talking to donors and board members, and at one point someone asked if they were together. Aurora didn't correct them, and neither did Liam. When the night ended, she walked him to his car. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know these things aren't your favorite." "It wasn't bad. Better than the last formal event I attended." "The wedding?" "Yeah." Aurora looked at him in the parking lot lights. "You know what's different now? You're not the man who went to that wedding. You're not the man who needed someone else to validate him. You figured out who you are. That's rare." "I had help." "We all need help sometimes. That's not weakness. That's being human." She got in her own car and drove away, and Liam sat in his for a long moment, thinking about how much had changed since that rainy morning when he'd asked Aurora to go to a wedding and she'd said no. Summer came, and Mia spent 8 weeks with Liam. They went to the beach, the science museum, the trampoline park Madison Brenner had bragged about. They made pancakes and burned half of them and laughed about it. They stayed up too late watching movies and talking about everything and nothing. On the last night before Mia went back to New York, she asked him a question while they were sitting on the porch watching fireflies. "Dad, are you happy?" "Yeah, kiddo, I think I am." "Good. Because you seem different, like lighter or something." "Lighter?" "Yeah, like you're not carrying something heavy anymore." Liam thought about that. She was right. Somewhere along the way, he'd put down the weight of not being enough, of comparing himself to Jonathan, to the life Vanessa had built, to the man he thought he should be. "I think I just figured out that I'm doing okay," he said. "Not perfect, but okay is enough." Mia leaned against him. "I think you're better than okay." "Yeah?" "Yeah, you're my dad. That's the best thing." After she left, Liam stood in his driveway and watched the car disappear. And instead of feeling empty, he felt full of love for his daughter, gratitude for the life they'd built together, hope for whatever came next. Monday morning, he walked into Blake Enterprises and found Aurora waiting at his office. "We need to talk," she said. "That sounds ominous." "It's not, I promise." She came in and closed the door. "I've been thinking about something for a while now, and I've decided it's time to say it out loud." "Okay." "You've become important to me, not as an employee, as a person, as someone I trust and respect and—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "And care about, more than I probably should." Liam's heart started racing. "Aurora, I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know because I've spent my whole life being careful, being professional, keeping people at a distance. And then you asked me to go to a wedding, and I said no, and I've regretted it every day since." "I don't regret it. If you'd said yes, I wouldn't have learned what I needed to learn." "Which was?" "That I don't need someone to save me. I just need people who show up, who see me, and you did that. You've been doing it all along. Aurora smiled, and it was the first time Liam had seen her smile like that. Open, unguarded, real. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we figure it out. No rush, no pressure, just two people who maybe want to see where this goes." "I'd like that." They didn't kiss, didn't make any grand declarations. They just stood there in his office, the morning sun coming through the window, and acknowledged something that had been building for months. Later, Liam would look back on this moment and realize it was the real beginning. Not the wedding that broke him, not the job that changed him, but this quiet acknowledgement that he deserved to be seen, to be chosen. Not despite his flaws and struggles, but because of them. Because being enough was never about competing with someone else's life. It was about building your own. That evening, Liam called Mia to say goodnight. "How was your day?" she asked. "Pretty good, actually." "Just pretty good?" "Okay, really good," she laughed. "You sound happy, Dad." "I am happy." "Good. You deserve to be happy." After they hung up, Liam sat in his kitchen, the same kitchen where he'd burned toast and felt like a failure and wondered if he'd ever be enough, and realized his daughter was right. He did deserve to be happy. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, he actually was.